What's up, everyone? Alex Corey here with CultivateChange.com. It is another gorgeous day in Western North Carolina. I was taking a walk right behind my house and found a park that I didn't know existed, so that's where we are. I've been writing a blog post this morning about vitamin D because I heard something the other day, it's probably a week ago, on one of the podcasts, it's probably High Intensity Health, snippet that caught my ear. I know a good amount of, or I thought I knew a good amount about vitamin D, but I think the snippet was, if you live north of Atlanta, Georgia, you're not producing vitamin D. And I went, that's a pretty generalized, bold statement. So I decided to look into that, and there's a whole literature around vitamin D that I had never come across, and that's called the Latitude Hypothesis. And it's pretty accurate and startled me a little bit. So if you guys haven't heard of this or delved into vitamin D deeper than it's necessary and good for you, that's what we're going to go over. This will be a short little snippet overview, and then we'll go into why it's so critical coming up. So there's a ton of research on vitamin D because it's so critical. So it impacts immune health, gut microbiome diversity, function, communication. Everyone usually knows vitamin D for its role in bone mineralization and absorption. So it's the first job that it was discovered to do was to tightly control calcium regulation in your serum, in blood. But it also regulates iron, phosphorus, and the more research has been done, I'll put a list on the screen, but it has effects on cardiovascular health, on metabolic health, directly related to your immune system, which is why it's suggested people take it over the winter whenever it's cold and flu season. Has implications with heart health and blood pressure, hypertension. Lots of studies coming out about its potential preventative mechanisms for colon, prostate, ovarian, and breast cancer. Obviously, it's tied to depressive symptoms, mental health, neurotransmitter function, basically every part of your body. The more I dug, I was like, oh, almost every system in your body, endocrine system, cardiovascular system, almost every major tissue has a vitamin D receptor. So it's probably one of the most critical vitamins, and it's over time been reclassified as a pro-hormone just because it doesn't serve quite the same function as like a vitamin A or a vitamin C would. It's a chemical messenger, and the presence of it or not will set off different cascades of metabolic processes. It runs like 200 different metabolic processes in your body, and I've done a video here about just the plethora of roles it plays. But the one thing that I didn't fully understand, I guess, was how little, or the complete mechanisms of natural initiation. So everyone knows that it's produced by the sun. So when the sun hits your skin, there's a form of cholesterol, a pre-cholesterol version, subcutaneous, so right under the skin, that gets triggered, and then that sets off a cascade of metabolic processes in your liver and kidneys to make different forms of it. Part of the issue with digging into the research is trying to find consistent measurements for the same type of vitamin D. So you'll see 25-OH-D, which is 25-dehydroxy vitamin D, and it's one of the downstream metabolites. So it's not what gets converted when the sun, and I can't even say the sun. So it's UVB. It's a specific spectrum of ultraviolet radiation, UVB rays, and I think it was somewhere between 215 and 270 nanometers, so a very specific wavelength of sun. Only about 5% of the UV that comes through is UVB. So that's why it's so hard to get in the winter. When that hits your skin, sets off a cascade of metabolic processes that then touches every facet of your body. What I didn't fully comprehend was how poorly this is synthesized in the winter. I was under the impression that if you just go outside enough on sunny days like today, you know, you'll get enough to survive, and your metabolism might not be on point, but it will be good enough. That's completely wrong, apparently. I don't know how this escaped me, but turns out that if you live above Atlanta, Georgia, as it were, there's different variations in this. Some people say 37 degrees latitude north of that, and that cuts through central Virginia and the US, and that latitude wraps all around the world, obviously. But that was one of the more lenient ones. There is one study, and it just compared, I think it was 2 different places in Canada. One was in Edmonton, one was in a little further south, and then one was in around 37 degrees. The amount of UVB that gets through is negligible because the zenith, that is the angle of the sun at its highest point in the day in North America, isn't strong enough to penetrate. So you don't get enough UVB to trigger that reaction in your skin. Now, I came across a ton of different research on that, which is called the Latitude Hypothesis. Most of it agreed, although there are a couple of studies that had taken issue with that because the idea was that doesn't make any sense. We have to have vitamin D for just functioning, and what happens to native peoples in northern territories, people who just don't absorb vitamin D, or they just don't have sun at all, like Inuit or any of those type of people. They haven't figured that out yet. There is a diet component to it. You can have cold water, oily fish are the best source of vitamin D. So cod, salmon, the traditional ones that ancestral diet likes, and that's probably why the ancestral diet likes it so much, because those are critical sources of nutrition for omega-3s, vitamin D apparently. Mushrooms also produce it, which is vitamin D2. It's a different molecular form than the animal form, which is D3. But to say the least, if you live north of Atlanta, Georgia, even if you're outside all day, it's kind of chilly in the winter, so you're going to be bundled up and not a lot of your skin is going to be exposed. In the summer, you can get away with 15 to 20 minutes of fairly large surface area skin exposure. So legs, arms, if you're sunbathing outside, it takes maybe 15, 20 minutes to get an adequate dose. And adequate is subjective. So there's a couple of different large global bodies that determine how much vitamin D is good or optimal. So the real low dose seemed about 600 IU, international units of vitamin D, was base to keep disease away. There were some that wanted to go as high as 10,000 IU, and that's for people who are vitamin D deficient to bring their levels back up to baseline. Probably what you're going to find in supplemental form are somewhere between 1,000 and 4,000 IU, which is the normal. So if you're outside on a sunny day in the middle of summer, in the middle of the day when the sun is at its highest point and you're sunbathing, I think the studies are, if you're 20 minutes will generate about 2,000 IU. So you don't need a ton in the middle of summer to really crank that vitamin D. And that sets you up for at least a couple days. It is fat soluble, so it stores, but you burn through it. You use it every day for everything, as we've discussed. So what's the solution for if you are in a colder climate, which probably most people are, and you're vitamin D deficient, which most people are? So a couple different studies I found, 40% or so. I'm going to link you the blog post that I made instead of just putting all the studies up on the screen. Blog post I made will be below. It has all the sources. It's a bunch of NIH and PubMed sources with a couple of other journal-specific, Science Direct, things like that. But about 40%-ish of the populations that they studied were vitamin D deficient, and the definition of that was pretty low. So that was, I think, less than 20 millimole per nanogram of blood, or per, it might have been 20 nanogram per deciliter of blood. Either way, I'll put that one up on the screen. that category of people was about 40% of the population, which is a massive number considering how many things vitamin D impacts. And I apologize for the noise. There's a flock of crows having a really good time right above me. But point being, take your vitamin D seriously. So if you are above Atlanta, Georgia, or just basically anywhere in the US or Canada, you're not getting it. Even in Texas, like Florida maybe might get enough if you're still getting outside. The point is, you still have to go outside. So you have to go outside purposefully for a good amount of the day in the winter and soak it up. Florida, you can get away with that. South Texas, you can get away with that. Most other places, it's just not happening. So you want optimal vitamin D levels. You don't want to just get around baseline. You want sufficient for use in everything, especially if you're active. Your metabolism uses it for everything, so it gets eaten up pretty quickly, and you need it to metabolize and thoroughly absorb a whole bunch of electrolytes, so it's pretty critical. Point being, unless you're going to eat a ton of mushrooms or salmon, which gets expensive all the time, if you can do seafood twice a week, that's fantastic. So you can do cod, sardines, wild-caught salmon. Wild-caught's always better. Cold water fish, the same ones that are high in omega-3s and good for everything else. The one thing, the supplement you can take other than straight vitamin D was cod liver oil. Cod liver oil has a ton of vitamin D in it, also has a ton of omega-3 in it, so that's a fantastic supplement. I actually don't know pricing on that because I've never looked it up. I just barely came across it today. I had heard of it, but it was not on my repertoire. I take straight vitamin D, so I do Primal Nutrition, Primal Blueprints vitamin D. It is a little vitamin D2, that's the mushroom derived form, and then some D3. So that skips if you take a supplement form like that, that skips a couple of the conversion processes within your body where you might lose a little because the conversion ratio is 100%. So I believe that jumps straight into the liver form. So if you take a D2 and a D3, that will go straight to the liver and jump in the metabolic and enzymatic pathway and then get distributed to all your tissues. So it's a little more efficient, and you still are going to take a little sunlight. I'm going to put a really cool tool that I found on the screen, and it was suncalc.com, I believe. And basically you just put in your location, and it will track the sun. You change the time of day slider at the top, and there is an altitude degree reading on the left. If that altitude degree reading does not go above 30, there's no UVB hitting you, or minuscule amounts, and you're not producing, or you're not given the opportunity to produce vitamin D naturally, endogenously through sun production. So take vitamin D seriously. Primal Blueprint is currently having a really stupid, awesome offer. I'll put it on the screen. If you buy their probiotics, which are pretty cheap and useful, since I'll put my microbiome video here. Probiotics are so useful. If your diet is lacking and it's not diverse in a bunch of fermented foods and you're not having them anyway, if you need to potentially re-add or just shore up the diverse amount of bacteria living in your gut, their probiotics is good, and they're shipping a free bottle of vitamin D with the probiotics. I don't know why, but we'll take it. Their discount code is Hello Sunshine, I believe. I'll put that on the screen, and that'll be in the links below. And then my discount code, Cultivated Change, will get you an extra 10% off. They stack for some reason. So basically, you just get free vitamin D. Order the probiotics. Just go to follow the link, add the probiotics to your cart, and then go back and add add them to your cart. Just look up Primal Sun is the word, add that to your cart, and then once you go to the cart, discount codes, Hello Sunshine is theirs, Cultivated Change, all caps, is mine. Basically, that'll take shipping off, so you're only paying for probiotics, and that's like 180 capsules, so that's a good amount. That should last you through the winter. Most of the studies that I saw said between October and March, depends on the latitude specifically, but between those times of the year is when it's real winter in most places. In New England, you're not producing any vitamin D. South, south of Maryland, there's a chance that you might be, but shore up your vitamin D levels. It's useful for everything, especially your immune health. If you're worried about keeping your immune system strong, one of the sure ways to do it. Sorry about the rant, guys, but it was a lovely day and I don't mind being outside. We'll check back midweek.